The Northwest home for paranormal. You're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
Shadow of the 1962 World's Fair, the Space Needle. Good evening. I am your host, Mario Magana. This is U.S. Phenomenon. You can be a part of the show by texting our studio hotline. We're live at 775-990-5151. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast or now USPTV for exclusive content where you won't get on the radio experience. Tonight, we are focusing our efforts on the recent incident that has sparked controversy and the speculation about this Chinese balloon. All right, tonight our guest is someone who's produced a ton of content related to the mysteries of human history, science, the occult, and so-called conspiracy theory. His Twitter handle is @MichaelParker. It is my pleasure to welcome back to U.S. Phenomenon. Welcome back, Michael Parker. Welcome back to the show, man.
Greetings, Mario. Glad to be here. And by the way, it's Michael Parker LA on Twitter, y'all.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Michael Parker LA.
You can put that in there. Oh, yeah, I got it somewhere. I got it in the banner somewhere. We'll get that in there. So welcome. You know, it's interesting because we were had a whole thing dialed in about UAPs, UFOs. We got to come back to that, man, right?
We will.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're like, yeah, let's do a show about UFOs, UAPs. You're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I was hyped. So excited about this.
And then this.
You know what's interesting about what we like to call this, the balloon, the Chinese balloon. I can't believe it took this long in regards for this balloon. We're talking all the way back to Monday, January 30th. If you knew that this was going through into the United States airspace through Alaska, through the Appalachians, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you just blow it out then?
Mario, I mean, the question that you're asking is the question that is infuriating a lot of us. And listen, when I first heard this, I thought exactly the same thing. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, so we've got a giant Chinese balloon floating over the continental U.S., over highly secure military and nuclear bases. And what, we're just going to watch it float around or what? And the whole thing was very perplexing. And so then they tried to say, well, we can't really shoot it down because if we shot it down, and yeah, there's a great picture of the thing. And one thing I noticed about this, if you look at the bottom of that, there was 8 what looked to be solar panels on the bottom. And what I was reading today, and they released it, is that this balloon is 200 feet in diameter. It's a really big balloon. And typically the recreational balloons that you'll see, when they fly them around for hobbyists, those will be 60 to 80 feet. But this guy, I mean, this is a big, big balloon. And then they're saying that the payload, this thing that's dangling under it,
right,
was a couple of tons. Well, we didn't really know that at the time. This was just released today, but they're trying to make the argument that look, well, we're not really sure it's up to no good. I mean, and if we were to try to take it down, then that debris might fall and hit somebody. Well, okay. The thing is, the where it was flying was over really scarcely populated areas. And I would argue that this is a national security issue. Can't we take that chance to protect our military integrity? But they chose not to do that. Days pass, the outrage grows. People are asking the same questions that you and I are asking. And finally, what does Brandon do? He has them shoot it down over the Atlantic Ocean after the things traverse the entire continental U.S. and 5, 6, maybe a dozen different military and nuclear installations. And we all get to watch it explode, which I think was definitely their intention for dramatic effect. Look, see, Joe did something about it and we shot it down. But yes, this is pretty outrageous.
Someone going back to the days of let's just go back to the 80s. And we talked about a president who had the ability to I don't want to call it a theatrical president in Reagan with regards to, Star Wars. And I always talk about this on the radio show or on the show itself. I always say radio show. By the way, we need to take a quick pause because we're going to be adding a new affiliate here who will be watching. So if you're in the Ocean Shores community area, our affiliate KOSW now has the opportunity. Anyone can actually watch it. If you're in the coastal community down there, North Beach Community TV will be joining us as an affiliate. So we're excited to have them join us on the show so that they get to be a part of this. So if you're watching right now on Twitch, YouTube, we thank you. You can always give us a call, 775-990-5151. Maybe someone saw this thing flying over their neighborhood. Maybe you're in Montana. Maybe you're in one of the Dakotas. Listeners out there in Dakota listening. So shout out to our faithful in the Dakotas. I'd love to hear from someone from the Carolinas that saw this thing get blown out of the sky. If you're out there listening or watching via Twitch tonight, give us a call, text us as well, 775-990-5151. So again, welcome to, we're going to be welcoming a new affiliate, it's NBC TV. That's a tongue twister for me, but we're excited to have them be a part of Northwest US Phenomenon. So I was just looking at some old cue sheets here. It says Northwest Phenomenon. Yes, we own Northwest Phenomenon, but we are US Phenomenon. So again, when we're talking about this piece in regards to the technology that we have, were they jamming this thing? I mean, obviously they were trailing it and watching it, but here's the other thing. Did the payload have any type of, I should have got one of our old geo engineers who, did the whole Comtrail situation. Were we talking about a serious, this is an invasion of one of our not so big allies out there, that this is like the new USSR, USA
Cold War.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the contrails, or some people call them chemtrails.
Right.
Weirdly enough, on the weekend, so when this thing was going on and before they shot it down on Saturday, my wife and I are walking the dogs, and here in LA, dude, there were chemtrails like I have not seen in months, if not years. Yeah, I didn't go post about it or anything, but I since heard other people saying the same thing. Now, look, this could be coincidence. And I know there's going to be people out there who say, well, chemtrails, that's not even a thing. It's just, the normal exhaust from planes. Hey, whatever. All I'm saying is that I noticed this, and it did happen coincidentally at the same time this thing with the weather balloon is happening as it's flying over the U.S. Is there a correlation? I don't know, but I know that not only I, but others noticed this and thought it was odd. And here's the deal. People are trying, they were pivoting, trying to take the heat off Biden on this and saying, well, look, hey, but weather balloons flew over the U.S. These Chinese balloons flew over the U.S. while Trump was president as well. Well, immediately several members of his administration refuted that and said, no, that's not what happened. Well, literally just before we did this, we went on the air.
Right.
Now there's talk, and it's being reported that I don't have the article pulled up here. I believe it was in Gateway Pundit was reporting this. But anyway, that supposedly Mad Dog Mattis, who was part of the administration under Trump, is quoted as saying, well, actually, there were some Chinese spy balloons, and they did float over Texas and Florida, but we didn't want to tell him because he was too combustible. Well, yeah, which, like, if that's true, and I don't know if it is or not, but if that's true, that's pretty bad. And is it treason? I don't know. Is it aiding and abetting the enemy? I don't know. But I think you damn well should have told the president so he could have acted upon it. So that is just the latest wrinkle to unfold in this thing. But let's just handle the situation at hand, which is this current situation. This balloon was huge. We don't know what the payload was. And it just looks to me like if you were serious about finding out what the payload actually was, surely there was a better way to do this than to shoot it down over the Atlantic Ocean. Listen, I don't know what's left of the thing. They're saying that the debris from this spread out over 15 football fields and it's underwater. So I know that our diving teams and U.S. military is good. How good are they? And what's left? I don't know. What will they be able to tell about this? I don't know.
Here's a good question for you. And maybe I just lost it, but how cool would it have been if we would have taken like done something like the Dark Knight series? Do you remember in the Dark Knight series where they had to do a reconnaissance mission where they couldn't just get Batman out? So he had like this special suit, and then he basically had the whatchamacallit, they had a payload string, and next thing you know, he had the payload string, went across, grabbed him with the grip thing, off he went. There he was, gone. You know what I mean? Like, what about like something like that where they were able just to grab the content of the balloon from the payload? You know what I mean? Like, just get some big, like a super tanker or some, like, my Boeing mind is farting right now.
I think I know where you're going with this. And that's a good question, because a lot of people were saying initially, because they floated so much nonsense, unintentional pun, but I'm glad I said it, floated. But anyway, during the week, they were like, well, we can't shoot it down because it'd be too dangerous. Then they were saying, well, it's actually not that easy to shoot them down because these weather balloons or these spy balloons do not have a heat signature. So you can't really lock onto them with certain types of missiles that you would usually use because they don't have a heat signature like an aircraft. Well, all I know is that when we finally did decide to shoot the thing down, one jet shot one missile, and that was all it took. So you would think that with this gigantic defense budget that we have and the highfalutin technology that we have, surely there would have been a better way to capture this thing. And if you were serious about finding out what was in that payload and what the reasons for this device actually were, then it seems like there would have been a better way to do this. And I think that the administration, I don't know if you could have played it any worse than they did, which leads you to the next question, which is like, well, was this just incompetence or is this a distraction from something else?
This coming in from Jeremy, texting from Bozeman, Montana, said that he did see this balloon. So thank you for watching via our Twitch stream, which you can do if you're out there. Tell your friends, everyone, watching us on Twitch, twitch.tv/On Air Mario. Try to keep everything simple, because sometimes I even fat finger the USP, the US Phenomenon piece. So it's nice to always not be able to like fat finger Phenomenon. So if you can't spell it, just go to onairmario.com. So again, thank you, Jeremy, for sending a quick text to us. Gotta love that. Interesting. If you do have some more information, if you took a picture, man, send it to us. We'd love to see it. 775-990-5151. Send us a text. We'll get that up on the website if you are able to share something, if you have something. What's interesting to me about this whole piece too, even doing like the reconnaissance, like blowing it out of the sky, really kind of like set me off of like, okay, now what? Yeah, you shot a missile through it. Okay. I mean, really, the missile didn't even have to blow up. It just had to really just go pierce the balloon. You don't need it to. And I believe that's what it looks like from the footage, is like it goes through, but doesn't actually detonate into because if it would have blown up, then it would have blown up the payload, I'm assuming, as well.
But Mario, I can't really tell, because a lot of people were saying, okay, so what's the powder? Because when you saw the impact, the explosion, it looked like powder came out of it. And I've heard some people say that in balloons, they do sometimes put powders in them so that they are able to inflate without sticking to each other. I don't know if that's true or not. But still, the point is, just from the couple of pieces of footage that I saw, it's not clear what was left intact. And I've heard differing accounts of, yes, it's retrievable, or no, it's blown to smithereens. I don't know. And here's the other thing, Mario, I don't really know. It's hard to know what to believe in this situation. The whole thing was so incredulous from the get-go, and they changed their story so many times. When finally the things were getting out of control entirely, well, then they blamed it on Trump instead of just dealing with the situation at hand. So I think the way that we look at this situation depends on your feeling about Joe Biden and the current administration. If you're pro Biden, then you're like, well, this was a nothing burger and he handled it and everything's fine. If you don't like Joe Biden, then you're wondering like, well, why did you allow this to happen? Why did you handle it so badly? Why did it take so long? So
we have the video here. Maybe we should go to this thing here and let's just see what we get here. Let's see if we might be able to bring up the video here. Let's see. What's interesting to me is, let's see if we can, let's see if the footage here shows correctly on what we're looking for here. And this video is courtesy of
CNBC.
Yeah, CNBC. Thank you.
Order the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible.
It's interesting because he talks about that he wanted to, he said, I ordered it to be shot down Wednesday.
I want to address that. Continue on, though. I want to talk about that.
How does that play out where you're like, hey, by the way,
I think that's bullshit.
You think so?
Yeah, I think I think that's total nonsense.
That's fine if you think that, but okay, for me, if I was president, because once upon a time, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to be president. Can you believe that, Parker? No, I can't. I would have shot that thing out of the sky as soon as it came in from Alaska.
Of course. And all I'm saying is Mario, I think that he's saying that after the fact. Of course, well, on the other hand, Joe might think that he thought that, and who knows? I mean, the man
is got tons of conspiracies with this, but go ahead.
Well, anyway, I think he's just running cover. I think he's saying that after the fact because he caught so much flack for not doing it. He's saying, well, I wanted him to do it on Wednesday. Well, you didn't. And you haven't really offered any solid explanation about why. Instead, you let it continue to float across the continental U.S. I mean, it couldn't have gone. It went across the entire U.S., the entire thing. They're like,
what's crazy is going through Monday, NORAD's tracking the balloon, which is like fine, Santa. Right? But they also track Santa too, right?
Right.
So that's a whole nother thing. So did the United States also play interference in regards to jamming this thing with, did they use AWACS, the AWACS military installation, the 767 or the 707? I'm quite familiar with because I built a bunch of them back once upon a time. The dome itself, the black piece with the white piece. So that's the piece. Was that playing interference? They didn't even talk about any of course, they're not going to give any military intel in regards to what they were doing with this balloon. If they were jamming it, but it seems to me that if this balloon was off course, as you can see me putting quotations or my inflection, my voice, I find it really hard to believe that this thing strategically went through the continental U.S. in these strategic moments where Monday, they're still tracking it. Tuesday, it's doing, the balloon's re-entering over Idaho. At this point, I was like, okay, why? What's going on? And then, you got February 1st. Everyone's like, hey, it's in Montana. I was like, what's going on? Why is there a Chinese balloon going over Montana, in the headline news? I was like, that's
Mario, try this out for size. When you're talking about the whole jamming thing, because I've heard other people look into this as well. Okay. And a friend of mine sent me an email chain yesterday. And on this email chain, you would recognize a bunch of the names. It was a show I used to produce, and several of the guests that had been on that show were all part of this chain, and they were discussing this thing, and they were hypothesizing about the fact that supposedly the U.S. was intercepting and jamming the information that might be being sent back to mainland China.
How?
Right?
How?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. This is all complete conjecture. None of them know if this were the case or not. And here's the deal. If you were intercepting this information or if you were jamming the information, there's no way to know if that happened or not. And even if they come out later and say that they did, I don't know that we can believe them. But I would say this: if you were able to jam the information systems of this balloon, and they were saying that the way the balloon maneuvered, and this isn't really completely new, is that, yeah, I don't know that there's thrusters or anything anywhere on the balloon, but what you do with these balloons in order to get them to go where you want them to is get them to go up and down. And if you get them to go up and down, then they'll catch certain air currents that'll make it go this way or that way or the other way. That's the way that you maneuver them. But I'm saying that if we were able to jam the information systems of the balloon, couldn't we have navigated it? Or maybe we did. I don't know. There's so much conjecture about this. And if we, in fact, were able to either jam it or intercept the messages, then we would know a hell of a lot more about this than we seem to. But even if we did, I don't know if we would ever know.
And we may never know.
No.
We may not ever know exactly what transpired on what happened with this balloon. Obviously, we saw what happened, but the intel in regards to did they really jam it? It was my understanding, and what I've heard was that it did have the ability to maneuver. It did have some.
They said that.
And what's interesting to me, if you're the United States or if you're anybody who has the ability to jam, you would think that if you're trying to stop something from, if you're jamming it, you would think that the frequency of the jamming would then take said thrusters, and then the controls would be hopefully be disabled so that then you could continue to possibly maneuver this balloon, this, UAP, because it's really a UAP. Well, it's identified. It doesn't belong to the United States. It doesn't belong to Canada. And by the way, I love our neighbors to the north. We nothing to see here. Move along.
Right.
We have free healthcare.
That's a good point too, because it didn't seem like we reached out to them for much help on this. We just kind of went it alone, as we sometimes do. But here's the other thing: the U.S. is a big, big place, and we test all kinds of aircraft in the deserts and Nevada and all that. I don't know. I just think that there were, if we would have been able to jam or intercept the messages of this balloon, it seems to me like we could have maneuvered it to a place where we could then shoot it down safely. Or, but we didn't do that. And a lot of people are trying to run cover for the Biden administration, saying, but it would have been dangerous. I mean, but we had to do it over the ocean. I don't know. I think that you have to weigh things out. Okay, is this a security issue or not? If it is, then all bets are off and we need to take it down right away. So is this all theatrics? Is this a distraction from something else? Now, just a side point to this, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was supposed to be going to China at the same time to begin some talks with Xi Jinping.
Right.
And but that's now all off the table, because now we've elevated this to a new level of Cold War. And my ultimate fear about this, Mario, my biggest worry about this is the buffoonery involved in all of this, in our mishandling of this, leads us into yet another conflict. And God help us all if we get in a conflict with China, especially over something as avoidable as this situation.
Here's the flight path. We didn't have a chance to check this out. It's interesting to me when we look at the flight path here, how it kind of goes through the this is where I would have said, okay, maybe your balloon's off course. I would have, hit up China and say, yo, Xi Jinping, what's up? You got, your balloon, your thing, your weather balloon's over here in our over here in Alaska. Do you want it? Oh yeah, we're sorry. But then it just continues to go through.
Right.
And our homeboys to the north, did they not say anything? Because it goes through it goes through all of British Columbia, and then, teases through Idaho, which is interesting to me when we look at this thing. We blow this up a little bit, but it's funny how it goes through Idaho, just tails it, which is unfortunate that I didn't even get a piece of the action. Goes through the sightings here in Montana, and it goes through what's interesting, which is a nuclear installation. The paths of where they went through. Yeah. Here's where our boy George W was at when 9/11 happened in Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Went through there. I mean, look at how the installation, this thing, continued to go through a strategic path.
Yes.
I would have blown this thing over here for sure. You came back in, okay, you're of no use to us. Who cares? Period. Like, if we're talking about in regards to like, this thing needs to be gone. It needs to be gone here. And that's okay. You know what? You're like, hey, look, your weather balloon is not in a good spot. Now, if they were worried about human life, look, that balloon was in some flyover country. No offense to some of our.
No, 100%. And I think the people who are in quote unquote flyover country would 100% agree with you. Like, yeah, man, just take it out.
And the reason why I say this is, look, United States, we want to like, look, man, just like anytime you want to continue to keep that swagger. Look, I don't want to say that I want the United States to always be the world's cop, right? In regards to what's going on out there in the entire world. But when it comes to the home front, look, we've had 9/11 happen here, Pearl Harbor. There's some, we've had domestic stuff as well. And when it comes to this, you just can't play. There's no conspiracy about this. You can't play. And that you got to be strong, and you just say, hey, look, your balloon's off course. I get it diplomatically. Hey, you can't get it under control. Cool. We're going to go ahead and take it out for you. We'd be happy to bring you the remains, but because your balloon's off course, we're going to have to shoot it down. Because at this point, now what happens? And now we get into the conspiracies of the what ifs.
And now we're in the fallout of it, and now China is upset with us, like, the balls of these guys. I mean, it's like now they're upset with us because we took out their spy balloon, weather balloon. They're claiming that it was a weather balloon. But listen to this. This just came out this afternoon. There's a guy, he's an Air Force General, Glenn Van Herk. He's the head of U.S. North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and also the Northern Command. This is what he said. He goes, this thing is 200 feet tall. It weighed thousands of pounds, and it may have carried explosives meant for self-destruction. He went on to say, of the payload itself, I would categorize that as a jet airliner type of size, maybe a regional jet such as ERJ, which is Embraer regional jet. I don't really know what that is. It probably weighed in excess of a couple thousand pounds. It had a payload that looked like 8 solar panels with something in the middle. Anyway, I find it very hard to believe that this was just a weather balloon. And I think that certainly U.S. military, Pentagon, defense, intel agencies would have known what this thing is quickly. And they would have then taken that to President Biden and said, look, we do have an incursion. It is a spy balloon. And people are upset about it. We should really deal with this right away. But that's not what they did. They let it float across the U.S., across all of those conspicuous sites that it went over, all of this airspace that is United States airspace. And then what do? We finally just blow it up over the water as it's exiting. I don't know if they could have played this out any more embarrassingly worse.
I mean, a good point. If depending on whose team you're playing on here, I don't know that this is really this is one thing I don't think that you play on a team. I think it's united as one. We're all Americans here, so this is where I put my hat on. It's like, no, this is like too. It's interesting because to me, this is a game. This is a game to see how far the Chinese government can go in a situation. Now that you know that if you're the United States, you better be on alert. You better be on alert on levels that are over the top. Like these installations should be now fortresses. I don't know how you're going to do that, but you better do it. I mean, there better be spy planes. There better be AWACS airport, planes out 24/7 now flying the continental United States, period. Yes, I know that NORAD's got we have the technology, but if we had the technology, why didn't we just take care of this thing at the front, not wait a whole week to take care of this because of the PR nightmare that they are considering as, loss of casualty life or property. Look, there were places around the country that could have been okay, where it just would have like fallen to, a pasture or whatever the case may be. I think that on the other scope of things, what keeps this so interesting for us, Michael, is they wanted to fall into the sea, so that
for sure.
So that at the end of the day, if there's any evidence left in this thing, we don't have proof other than what we saw in that video that we saw just a few minutes ago.
Mario, that's what I think, and other people think likewise. Now, let me take this a step further, because a lot of people said, "Oh, come on. Why would they need a weather balloon to do surveillance? They've got satellites." Well, here's the deal. Think of the balloon as a low-tech satellite.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I don't know how people are not making this connection. It's like, because they're all saying, well, with satellite technology, you can do this, that, or the other thing. Well, here you've got a really inexpensive low Earth orbit satellite that has no heat signature. It doesn't cost that much to launch one of these things. You don't have to alert the planet that you're launching a satellite with a rocket or whatever. I mean, it's actually quite stealthy. And I think that what we're going to see is a lot more use of balloons in military theaters than people. I think people think, well, balloons, that's something we did,
100 years ago.
Yeah, no, they're actually really effective and really smart and quiet. So it was a very clever action on the part of the Chinese.
I would say so. I mean, I stutter here because I'm like in disbelief that something like this, a balloon like this, had the opportunity to come all the way through the United States. And even if this payload here, which looks like panels,
mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I don't have a better picture of this right now. And everything was very granular, very grainy from, I mean,
and that's about as good as anything I've seen. Is basically there was like 8 solar panels and something in the middle. So,
right. I mean, this is like everyone's got a Bigfoot picture that's very nice. But to be honest with you, man, I listening to this throughout the week as it unfolded, I was like, because we had a full show that just ready to go about UFOs and how this was going to play out. And then I was like, yo, when we first started talking about it, I thought it was going to be a 1-2 day event. We're talking a full week, 7 days of chilling through the United States. I am so just beside myself. I'm not being someone who's gun-ho American, like, yo,
me too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this screams so many, this gives me PTSD, like Cold War PTSD, where we're like, hey, duck and cover type situation. For those who have no clue what that was like to do those. I mean, yes, you've done fire drills and people have gone through, the school system and done active shooter drills. Yeah, I get that piece. But to have something that even Russia didn't even do back, the USSR had they didn't do anything like this. And if they did, we were not on top of that, obviously. But to have something like this come through, just almost like someone spilling ketchup all over your nice dress shirt. You know what I mean? You're at the ball game and you accidentally got some food on you. I mean, that's kind of what this feels like to me, where I'm like, dang, really? The Chinese are going to send a balloon through and we're going to wait 7 days to do something about this? Oof.
Mario, I think that's the thing that bugs everybody the most. Because, look, we don't know, what it was doing. We don't know what information it did or did not transmit. But what we do know is it was a global embarrassment. And now depending on how we and they play the aftermath of this, there was supposed to be a meeting where Anthony Blinken, I'm not a fan, but still, he's the Secretary of State, was going to go see Xi Jinping. And if there's anything that we could use right now is a de-escalation of tensions between the U.S. and China. So that would have been a good thing. But I would assume that's completely off the table now. So oh my God. But my point is now whatever has transpired. Now we're in the next phase of just seeing what the fallout is. And maybe in a month, this will be in our rearview mirror, and it'll be one of those things that we look at and think, well, that was unfortunate and embarrassing, but it was a one-off thing. I don't know. It certainly caught the attention of a lot of people. And I think that, I even got a few texts about it over the weekend from people I wouldn't have expected to, and they were kind of making light of it.
Did you hear from Mark Jacobson? Did he say anything to you?
He did not. No. These are just
yeah.
I didn't. Did you hear from him?
I did not hear from him. I should have briefed down. What is funny, and I just posted the balloon, another photo of the balloon. So restaurants are now taking it to, now that they see that the balloon technology has been so advanced and that you can go from coast to coast, no pun intended there. They're now talking about doing deliveries through the balloon system, So if you need a Uber Eats, or maybe it's, Grubhub, or however you get your food delivered. Now it can be done through the comforts of a balloon right to your Julian balcony. And if you're in the city, or maybe in your backyard, balloon just shows up.
Yep.
Get your Chinese food right there. Boom. I actually love myself some good American Chinese food. There's a couple of great ones around here, but just interesting to me that now this might be the new delivery system out here, much more cost effective in regards to getting there without burning a lot of fossil fuel.
Well, people have been talking about drones for deliveries and everything. But here, for a serious note, one of the first things that I thought about, and you and I spoke about this a little bit, and we'll touch on it in the future, but I was at a film premiere a couple of weeks ago, and it was about the power grid in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea behind this film, which is Grid Down, Power Up, which I would encourage people to see. I believe it's on Netflix. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. But the idea about the film, it's a documentary about how easy it would be to crater the U.S. electrical grid system. And if you think that COVID was a problem, you wait till the U.S. doesn't have electricity, then we go medieval like in 72 hours or something. I think it just goes nuts. Well, one way you could do that, one way you would do that is with an electromagnetic pulse weapon. Or you detonate a small tactical nuke in the atmosphere. It doesn't take out anything on the ground in a physical manner, but it does shut down electrical and digital technologies. So the issue here is that something like one of these balloons could carry a payload that has like an EMP type generating weapon, or a nuke that essentially acts like an EMP. So this is a very real threat, and we're going to have to get our head around what we're going to do about this in the future. And we're certainly going to have to act a lot faster going forward.
Do you think with a situation like that, when we're talking about, having these types of technologies in regards to like a nuke possibly going off in a large city like Seattle, or maybe in LA, or even on the coast like a Carolina or DC, where these types of situations may take and transpire now, because this is the new way of fighting war and turning a whole city into civil unrest, because at the end of the day, most people don't have enough food to last them the entire week. We've come so accustomed just going to the grocery store. I don't even, I'm embarrassed to say, like, I got enough food to last me maybe a week and a half.
100%. We go to the grocery store a few times a week, and the beauty, well, maybe that's not the right word, but the advantage that using an EMP type weapon over an old school bomb or something. Listen, if you're an invading force, you don't want to destroy all the infrastructure of the place that you're going into. You want to be able to go in there, take over, and get things back running under your command. So an EMP just takes out the electricity. We're not blowing up buildings. We're not taking out water type infrastructure. You're just turning everything off, and then you move in and you take over. So this, in the 21st century, warfare is a different animal. It's no longer just blow everything up and lay waste to everything. It's just incapacitate the situation so that you can then dominate.
So when you say that, my mind starts going through a couple scenarios, and I go back to like the balloon here as a great example, because it is what is the most current thing with the technology or the intel that China may or may not have captured. Does this give them enough intel? Let's say they got what they needed to be able to do what you just said. Is now they know where the strategic marks are, where to do this at. If it's a Billings where the grid goes to wherever to get to said nuke site, you would think that the United States is smarter than being on a grid system, but we don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the installation is there. All I know is that at the end of the day, you had a balloon that went through the entire continental U.S. and strategically floated through the entire over strategic marks that only certain places in the United States we even know of. Like, I only know about Nebraska because that's where, Chicken W went to hide out when, his whole team was freaked out. Hey, by the way, how much did you think that 9/11 really was the beginning of the coup for removing him from office? I was like, this is it. I was in the middle of Pale Horse. Behold the Pale Horse, not Pale Horse Rider. I was in the middle of that book. Phew, man, I just threw the book away. I just threw the book. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. This is end times.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that 9/11 was to take Bush out of the White House?
Yeah.
I didn't think that. But
the
it's
whole
an interesting idea.
New World Order coming into,
I think he was part of that.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. But
what's great about that is, you can share that. It's like, it's interesting because I was like, oh, this is it. But I felt bad for him going back and watching all these documentaries, regardless if you're a Bush fan or not. But he wanted to go back. They're like, no, you ain't going back. He's like, yes, take me back. And then it was like a security there was a security risk for him to be there, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because Bush and Biden are kind of the same kind of guys, where some people theorize that Bush was actually smarter than he played himself off to be. I don't think that's the case. I don't think Bush was that smart. And I think that was part of the reason that he was installed, was like, look, man, we got this guy under our thumb. He's going to do whatever we tell him to do. Biden's the same way, man. It's like, I'm not trying to pick on Biden. That's what we're stuck with. He's my president too, but I don't think the man is up to the gig at all. And I think that when he says things on camera like, oh, I wanted to shoot it down on Wednesday, I just don't believe him. I don't believe him. I think I could be wrong. I don't think I am.
On that piece there, I don't know that talking point should have been. I think that was a talking point that should not have been put out there. But I think
he might have been ad-libbing.
I bet you're right on that piece. I'm sure that, as we know, as you were just referring to Bush and Biden being kind of cut from the same cloth, I think they both would have shot that thing out of the sky as soon as possible. But I believe that, like you're saying, that there was someone else under control saying, hey, look, this would look bad for us. Let's let the balloon play out. I think the United States wasn't ready. I think they just continued just to watch it and say, hey, look, that I would have diplomatically went through and said, look, come and get your balloon. If you're able to control it, control it. If not, we're going to shoot it out. Give them the, I mean, they gave them 7 days. 7 days.
Well, and the deal is, if this guy from NORAD is correct, and I don't know that he is, but he was saying that we think that it is possible that this balloon also had explosives on it so it could self-destruct. If that were the case, then people behind the scenes should have been talking back and forth with China and said, look, take that thing as high into the atmosphere as it will go and blow it up. If you don't blow it up, we're going to blow it up. And just take the bull by the horns. It's going to be an international incident almost any way you slice it.
I 100% agree with you. Let's look at the balloon here again. And this is at 56,000 feet in the sky. I mean, the reports that jet airliners were like, yeah, we see it. We see it up here. I mean, the reports were coming in all around the United States. You're talking about grounding airplanes. Planes.
That's an air hazard for air travel.
Yeah. Well, at 56,000 feet, that, you know.
You're right. I mean, that's a little high, but
yeah. You're going to burn a lot. You're going to burn a ton more fuel at that high altitude. But again, when you're looking at this piece here, we're talking about something that was up there, but they still saw it. It's interesting that they still saw the balloon at that altitude. So if you're seeing, so you're talking, let's say most crews were flying 37, maybe 40,000 feet. Let's just say because it was a rough day or something of that nature. You're saying another 10,000 feet, you can see this thing? I'm going to say it was probably closer to 40. If they're saying 55, I'm guessing this thing was like just shy of 50,000 feet.
Well, and my understanding is the way that you maneuver the thing is you get it to go up and down. And by going up and down, it then catches, like a surfer catches a wave, the balloon catches air currents. So if the thing's going up and down, I mean, it's not good any way you slice it. And you're right. It's typically flying higher than air travel, but I don't know. I mean, with the amount of air travel today, you could also make the argument that this was, a danger, just having a rogue 200-foot balloon with several 1,000-pound payload on it floating around the continental U.S. Not a good thing.
And here's the flight path again. And yeah, so there were times during the week where planes were grounded during just for hazard purposes. They didn't want anything to happen to, the jet airliners, things of that nature. And again, when they made the call to finally remove this balloon out of the United States air space within the continental, what would you call it, border, U.S. border, they had to blow this thing out of the sky so that it landed in U.S. waters, or then it became some treaty, international treaty issue. Look, it's over the U.S. You could have blew it over some cornfield and called it good. I think again, this really goes back to what was on the payload that they don't know. The United States government does not want individuals like yourself, myself, other U.S. citizens to freak out about.
Look how big Alaska is. And if this thing came in over the Aleutian Islands, I mean, I don't know how long it took to get across Alaska, but you're telling me there was no place in Alaska that you could have taken that thing out safely?
It said it was in it went into Canada. So it was only in Alaska for a day.
Okay.
Wait, 29. So 28, 29. So 2 days in Alaska, floated through Alaska for 2 days.
That's 48 hours. You scramble a jet, you take it out with one missile like we did off of South Carolina.
You're done.
Yeah.
You don't have this situation. And I'm pretty sure that most of Alaska is not heavily populated.
I don't think so. Caribou, elk, bears,
Bigfoot.
Exactly.
Yeti. I don't know what's up there. I mean, there could be. Yeti could be up there too, I don't know. I mean,
so anyway, this thing, I mean, I will say it started January out interesting. I didn't see international ballooning incident being at the top of the headlines for January.
You know, we do have a sponsor that's having us go to Nevada for the big Santa Fe air balloon conference. We're going to go check that out.
Cool.
We're going to get blown up for that as well. I don't know that I'll be taking any hot air balloon rides anytime in the near future myself. I'll definitely get in an airplane. The hot air balloon, by the way, I wonder if that balloon was filled with helium.
That's a good question. I mean, I'm assuming that it was, and that's what some people have said it was, but I don't know that much about these kinds of balloons. I don't know what else you put in them, some kind of lighter than air gas, but I'm assuming it was helium.
Yeah. Are you 50? Okay, so there were times where this thing, we can look at the flight path, but look at where it was in the altitude wise. Interesting.
The other thing that I noticed during the week was like when they were trying to like calm everybody down, don't go out there and shoot at it, as if somebody was really going to try to shoot at it. But is that, they were trying to say, well, it's actually more difficult to shoot down than you think. But at the same time, we took it out with one missile. But my understanding is that if you were to pierce one of these weather balloons with like bullets or what have you, well, it's just a slow leak at that point. It's not going to explode. And it's not going to suddenly come down. I don't know. We all learned a lot about balloons this week that we didn't know beforehand.
And we know that the plane that shot that thing down, what's funny is it's his first kill was a balloon. It's terrible to see that the Raptor is it's going to have a little balloon on it that for its first shot kill. That's terrible to me. The laugh is being funny because tongue in cheek, you're like, oh yeah, what'd you do? Well, I shot down this balloon. What I think, to me, when looking back at the whole situation, I think really in the conspiracy world and like the phenomenon world, you look at this for a hot second and you sit down and try to read through the headlines. What's really going on here?
Right.
Is this a ploy for China to get military installation intel? We're talking, to me, this is the Cold War Part 2. And this goes beyond just a Cold War. We're talking about economic, things of that nature where this could cripple the United States in regards to how we move as a country, because a lot of things that people don't realize, I mean, probably look at half the crap we own is coming from China, somewhere else, not from the USA. So remember that, folks, when you're out there buying stuff, buy stuff that's made in the USA. I'm not
vote with your dollar.
Yeah. Vote with your dollar. And the biggest thing too is, look, we're so dependent. And I know that everyone's going to say, well, it's cheaper. Yeah, it is cheaper. But if I could build myself a U.S. phenomenon hat, yeah, I'm going to try and have it done in the United States.
You can.
Yeah. It's possible. It may cost me, $100,
but you're supporting, you're supporting a good American company by doing so.
Right. So if there's any hat companies out there that want to, let us know. I will say this. At the end of the day, China had a balloon successfully go over our airspace. Now, if we would have done the same thing, you know damn well they would have shot that thing out of the sky. No hesitation. No hesitation.
Yeah.
So remember, when you're out there tonight, when you're looking up at the stars, be sure to look, because you may be calling NORAD to say, hey, there's a balloon up here. I mean, I just am. Hey,
there was one floating over Latin America. And the other day when you and I'll just throw this last thing in. When this first broke open and the story was coming out, I was looking it up. It's like, these incidents have happened before. And that's part of the whole thing. Well, what happened under Trump? Maybe so, maybe not. But currently, I guess the second one's still floating over Latin America somewhere. And we're assuming that one's Chinese as well. And I've seen photos in the past where they floated over Hawaii and in various places. So this isn't a one-off thing. This happens occasionally. And that's not to say that all of them are nefarious. It's just that who would have really thought in the 21st century, 2023, we'd be talking about balloons as being a threat.
Technology warfare to grab intel. And look, I'm not one for China. I don't know. I want to say they definitely are pushing the boundaries. They are pushing the envelope by saying we are going to do whatever we want when we want. Stop us. Stop us.
Yeah.
And now we're at this point in we're doing a radio show about that. We're doing a show about it.
Yeah.
And now at the end of the day, China may know what kind of underwear I wear. I have no idea. I mean, there's so many memes that were going out. Nudist colony meme going around, like some dude spread eagle, just like, oh my Lord. I know we wanted to get to, here's the last thing I want to talk about, even with the balloon going down through South America and whatnot. Why hasn't somebody down on that end done something about it? We cannot be always the police, but I know we took care of ours, but again, I think this is China showing their little strength and flexing a little muscle at the end of the day, saying, look what we're doing, and you haven't stopped us yet. Sure, the U.S. may have blown their one balloon out of the sky, and if that's the case, there shouldn't be any diplomatic fallout for us blowing the thing out of the sky if it was just a weather balloon. If this goes further to something else, we're going to start doing what we used to do back in the day, and it's going to be more of the shelter in place, because there's going to be something bigger if that's the case. If we're now in a diplomatic stall, we know that this is bigger than what a weather balloon is, because they're trying to do scientific work. If that's the case, it's bull. In regards to like, oh yeah, whatever. But I'm pretty sure you're not going to see much come out of China. Just in regards, I think they're just going to let it be. I don't think they're going to push anything. I think they're going to just be quiet. I think they're going to examine what they have. United States better be on red alert. Be ready at all given hours. NORAD better be working extra hard on making sure that nothing infiltrates the airspace, even from Hawaii's standpoint. As soon as something goes out, you better be on it. You better be ready as the United States. Be 100% ready. That's all I got to say in that regards.
Well, I agree with you. And we have the biggest defense budget in the world. And that's what we're supposedly spending all the big bucks on is protecting our country. So, it's as simple as that. And I hope that this doesn't turn into a larger incident. That's my biggest worry about the whole thing, regardless of what the true intentions of the balloon is. How we handle it now is, and what are our future relationships with China as a result of this. I just don't want it to turn into a bigger incident than it already is.
As we get ready to wrap things up from the Pacific Northwest and from our affiliate, our co-host this evening, Michael Parker out of LA. Thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
Him at Twitter at Michael Parker LA. You can watch the entire show rebroadcast on US Phenomenon. Go to onairmario.com. Subscribe to our podcast. If you're not a subscriber to the podcast, you can get exclusive content that you don't get on the radio experience. You can subscribe to USPTV and you can watch the entire show without any interruption, commercial-free, sponsor-free. Be sure to join us and watch us. As we wrap things up from the Pacific Northwest, I'd like to thank our guest, Michael Parker, for joining us this evening. I'd also like to thank our affiliates, KOSW, KGRG, KAPY, our flagship station, KVI, and our new affiliate coming soon, North Beach Community TV, Channel 68. We're excited for them to join and jump aboard the U.S. Phenomenon, train.
Juggernaut.
Yes. As we wrap things up, be sure to look up at the sky, because you never know what you might see. It may be a balloon. Good night.